Photosynthesis and Cellular Respiration in the Carbon Cycle by Kapish Joshi, Tom Minar, and Colton V. First, we will discuss photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is a key topic and factor when regarding Earth and Earth systems. Photosynthesis is a plant's process of making their own sources of energy. They do this by converting carbon dioxide and water in the presence of sunlight to create glucose sugar, which the plants use as a source of energy, and oxygen, which us and other animals breathe and use every day. This chemical reaction of converting water and CO2 into glucose and oxygen can be found on the side of the screen. The first key ingredient to photosynthesis is energy that powers it all, the sun. The sunlight is absorbed by the chloroplasts of the plant leaves and allows for the plant to actually create glucose and oxygen. The next thing the plant needs are the reactants for photosynthesis. As we know, the reactants are carbon dioxide and water. The plant absorbs the CO2 from the air around it and gets the water from the condensation that eventually precipitates into the soil. The water gets sucked into the plant through its roots when it's in the soil, and the plant can now begin photosynthesis. As the fish in the bottom chamber does cellular respiration, which we will discuss later, she releases CO2, which is a product of respiration, but a reactant of photosynthesis. This is what makes it a cycle. Now that the plant has all the necessary ingredients, it makes glucose and oxygen. Some of the glucose is used to help the plant grow, some is used to give the plant energy, and some is used by other creatures to eat and use for their own energy. The oxygen gas that is made by the plant is released into the atmosphere for us and other animals to breathe and use for cellular respiration. Cellular respiration is essentially the counterpart to photosynthesis. As seen by the chemical formula on the left, cellular respiration is the breaking down of high-energy sugar molecules, such as glucose, to give whomever eats it energy. There is more to cellular respiration. Cellular respiration requires the presence of oxygen, which is breathed in and is produced through photosynthesis, as well as the glucose or other sugar. Then the sugar is broken down into water and carbon dioxide, and ATP is produced, which is the energy molecule. First, those who undergo cellular respiration need glucose. The glucose and cellulose can be obtained from the plant, but also from the decaying food and fruit in the decomposition chamber. The sugar, glucose, is a key ingredient to be able to perform cellular respiration. The insects and animals that decompose the decaying fruit in the decomposition chamber use the sugar in the fruit to perform cellular respiration, and the praying mantis in the top chamber eats the leaves and the plant for cellulose for cellular respiration. Another important ingredient to cellular respiration is oxygen. The oxygen is found in the air all around the atmosphere around the plant. An atmosphere is the layer of gases surrounding a plant or material body. In the eco column, the atmosphere is the layer of gases such as oxygen and CO2 that are present inside the bottle, around the plants, and above the water. Once the oxygen and glucose are present, the organism can do cellular respiration. After doing cellular respiration, the organism releases the CO2 they produced back into the atmosphere and keep the ATP for themselves. Let's take a moment to discuss the biosphere. A biosphere is a self-regulating system in which all the systems involved integrate and interact with each other: the atmosphere, the hydrosphere, and the geosphere. In the eco column, the biosphere is the whole column. The plants interact with the atmosphere when obtaining the carbon dioxide and releasing the oxygen. The animals interact with the plants when they obtain glucose and cellulose, and interact with the atmosphere when they release the CO2 back into the air and absorb the oxygen from the air. This is what makes it a cycle in which all the different organisms and plants are reliant on each other to help each other survive. In cellular respiration, organisms produce ATP as well as CO2. After cellular respiration, a net gain of 32 ATP is produced. ATP is energy molecules that actually allow for plants and animals to move, work, and survive. The final product of cellular respiration is water. The water is released by the organism into the geosphere, which is also the whole column. A geosphere is where all the different elements, such as the ground, the bodies of water, and the air. The water released from cellular respiration is disposed of into the body of water at the bottom of the column or into the dirt. The organisms responsible for decomposition perform cellular respiration to decompose the organic material in the decomposition chamber. They are simply doing cellular respiration. They eat the bananas and the leaves and the other stuff in the chamber and use the oxygen in the chamber around them to do cellular respiration. Then they release water and CO2 back into the geosphere to be used in photosynthesis later. When organisms die, they release CO2 into the atmosphere as well. One of the final and most important things to understand is how all the different spheres interact. To recap, the geosphere is the Earth-like element, water, soil, and air, in the eco-column and the materials in the decomposition chamber. It is the atmosphere and the hydrosphere combined, basically. The atmosphere is the gases present in the column, such as oxygen and carbon dioxide, which are used by the plants and animals to survive and produce glucose. The biosphere is the entire column and how all the different organisms and things such as dirt, plants, decomposing food, and animals interact with others and help each other survive. Finally, the hydrosphere is the water in the eco column. For example, the condensation on the side of the bottle, the little pond that the betta fish lives in, and the other water that may be present. The combination of all the different spheres and all different processes occurring in the spheres makes it a cycle. Since photosynthesis and cellular respiration both use CO2, they recycle the CO2 back and forth to each other. Decomposition releases CO2 in the atmosphere, which is the same CO2 that can be used again and again in photosynthesis. There is no combustion or fossil fuels burning in the eco column, but the same applies. The CO2 would be used over and over again in the carbon cycle.